Well, I'm very, very pleased to be talking to one of my new podcast heroes. You'll probably be surprised to hear it's Nick Vatterott. How are you, Nick?
I am surprised to hear it's Nick Vatterott. I've been pronouncing it wrong the whole time, and so might be my accent. And it doesn't come out in my last name is just not. It's not meant to be said in American English. It's not
really. How would you say it in your native tongue, which I know is American, but
yeah, my native tongue. I don't know. I don't know how to say it. I always kind of trail off at the end. It's like when you're a stand-up comic and you bring up the next comic, but you're not quite sure what their name is. So you go, hey, give it up for this next guy. Give it up for Bob. Hey!
Yeah. Have you heard of my good comedian friend, David Huntsberger? Have you heard of him?
You know, it's amazing because you didn't mean to, but the connection cut out right when you said his last name. So I did it on purpose.
That's working. David Huntsberger.
David Huntsberger.
Yeah.
Do I know David?
I don't know, but his name gets mispronounced so much.
Oh, I could see different terrible directions that name could go.
At least you're called Nick, and every other person you run into is called Nick. So that's lucky.
Yeah. But it's funny, you know, I write for Real Time with Bill Maher, and people will mispronounce his name. They're like, give it up for Bill Mayer. And it's like, you're a comic, man. How do you not know? Yeah. He's like a pretty famous comic. How do you not know his name?
My wife's maiden name is Ma, so I had a bit of a head start. But she still gets, she did get Mayer.
Yeah.
Before I owned her, obviously. But let's talk about this. Let's talk about this. The album you're releasing today in our time, but tomorrow in your time. Disingenuous.
This is a full-blown comedy special you can watch with your eyes. There will be like an album that comes out in a couple days, I think. But yeah, man, I appreciate you having me on for this because this is like, you know. This is a big deal. You know, it's going to be on like iTunes and Amazon and Google Play and streaming services that I'm unfamiliar with. But this is a thing I started working on like 4 years ago. And I wanted to shoot like a kind of a stand-up. I always loved my favorite stand-up specials were like kind of the documentary style where it's a comic kind of like running around the city. You know, like I think Seinfeld had one when I first moved to Chicago to start comedy. Seinfeld had one after like he did I'm Telling You for the Last Time. And then he did this special where he was working on new material and was running around New York. And Steve Byrne has one where I think he tries to do 13 sets in one night in Manhattan. And, you know, there's a bunch of I've always loved that film. And I always feel like stand-up comedy films in general are a lot of times they're in this giant theater and it's like, well, that's not really where comedy happens most of the time. I wanted to do something that showed, hey, this is me running around the city. And this is kind of a little bit of what it's like, but it's also a little mockumentary. So it's kind of not completely earnest. Hence the name Disingenuous. Yes.
Well, let's talk about the disconnection between Get Rich Nick Vatterott and on stage, Nick. I mean, my goodness, when you're gently trying to help Nick Turner in his life, and he's not always great at life, you know, the podcast Nick Turner.
Sure.
I don't know him personally, obviously.
For comedic effect.
Yeah, and you know, you're really trying to be as very supportive as you can. And the practical episodes of Nick, what were they where you went in and did the stuff? Well, that was the first 25 or so. Well, you know, the numbers don't really matter.
You know, I think in the very beginning, what we really wanted to do in the very beginning was, you know, kind of do this like 10 episode thing, you know, which these podcasts where people put a lot of work into like, you know, intense work into like a 10 episode season, you know? And I was like, that sounds interesting to me. Cause we did I did the Nick Vatterott show a long time ago, and it's a lot of work to do a thing every week, as you probably know.
Yeah.
And this was very intensive because it was like, instead of just coming in and talking about the news for an hour, we would talk about a way to make money, whether it was, going on a game show, going to the horse track, babysitting kids. Then we would go and we would always interview somebody who had some experience with this. And then the second day we would go out and do the thing. We'd go to the horse track, we'd go to the Price is Right. And then the third day we'd come back and talk about the experience. So it was a lot of work. And then, and then Earwolf was like, cool, can you do that every day for forever? We're like, we'll try. And we kept a pretty good pace with it for a while, but then, then the pandemic hit. I don't know if you guys had a pandemic out there. We had one out here.
We heard about it.
You heard about it?
No. We're still we're having a full-blown pandemic right now. It's as bad as it ever was with the new variant.
I feel like suddenly this week and it got real bad again, or people started talking lockdown again.
I don't know. Look, we'll have to all band together and just try and endure. That'd be the way to do it.
Yeah. Well, everyone wants to move forward. I want to go backwards. That's what if I was like a leader, I'd say like, we need to go backwards. We need the future is in the oldest generation.
I think seeing some of your stand-up, a political career is definitely, could be a big success.
You know what the thing is? I think every single person reads the news and goes, I could do a better job than these bums, I mean, what you have to do, what talks me out of it? It's like what you have to do to here's the big problem. You kind of have to like people or at least make it look like you like people. And I don't think I have that part of the politics in me. I don't have the part that says that's going to shake somebody's hand that I don't like or pretend I like a person I don't like. I don't think I can just sit there with a smile on my face and be okay. Although it's funny, whenever there's like a TV show or a movie, this is like one of, I think, a hilarious trope. It's the person who gets caught off, doesn't realize they're on camera. And they go, what the problem is? We need to blah, 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 blah. And then it goes viral. And then that person winds up like getting elected. I feel like I've seen that story several times.
As a younger man, I thought, go get rid of politicians and just pick the experts. So we picked the best transport. You probably thought this at times, the best transport expert, the best science expert, the best military expert, all the best top three, and put them in power. But as soon as I've said put them in power, we're in trouble because, it just goes to the head. Then it's sex scandal, this, cocaine here. And, it just goes because people are people, right?
I would do it just for the scandal. My platform would be scandal. I would be like, I would be the first candidate that's just being very, transparent that I'm in this for the money and the cocaine. And I don't have any scandals, but I'm looking forward to having some as soon as I'm in. I mean, you know what I've realized the past couple of years, especially being is so reading the news from every source, and these a lot of these people are like, they're like wrestlers. They're playing characters. They know the role they're supposed to say. I mean, I think a lot of us get very mad at the hypocrisy on both sides that happen. I mean, both, whatever your side is, your side can do better. And then I realized they do this because they know that they're being hypocritical, but they have to check some sort of box to to appease a certain demographic or some sort of voting base or something. And that part of politics is if you have to do that to get elected, that sounds terrible.
Our prime minister was he must have been dizzy with his turnaround on government intervention in COVID stuff. The government was just into everything, and we didn't even know if it was legal. They're saying you can't do this and you can do that, and we're like, oh, I guess they're right, and they were right in the guts, you know. And then all of a sudden, when they realised they were going to get voted out on this, it was like, it's time for governments to pull out of people's business. It's like, Jesus, your head must be spinning, mate. You know, but God bless them. But the not so old Norm Macdonald joke is, did you hear about this guy, Bill Maher? He's giving away the solution to everyone's problems for free. But that's from a few years ago, R.I.P. Norm. But what do you think about Bill? He's obviously a big political figure. Is he? What can the average international person take away from someone like Bill Maher?
Well, you know, I think like one of the things that I really like about the show is that he is not one of these people that is that feels that his team is, you know, he is more important than anything else. You know, I think some people are like, well, I can't possibly criticize my own team because that the other team needs to be where all the criticism goes. And, you know, and I think that like there should be more of that. You know, we sort of live in this world where everyone's pointing fingers at everybody else, and nobody ever points fingers at themselves. And then sometimes when they do point fingers at themselves, the people on their team go, oh, you must be against everything we believe. It's like, no, we can all do better, you know? And I think I think around the world, this is not only around the world, but like, this is not new. This goes back. I was reading this like, newspaper that came out like on my birthday. I got some alert and I was reading like some of the stuff, and the same political headlines were happening, you know, 40 years ago as they were happening today. You know, I didn't read as much news when I was 0 years old as I do now. But yeah, I think that's like a huge thing. And you get these like, some of these leaders around the world that rise up because I guess that's sort of what populism is a little bit. I mean, just telling the people anything that their side believes, just give it to them. And, you know, you got to challenge your own, you know. If we want the other sides, if we want the people who oppose our opinions to sort of challenge themselves, we have to do the same thing.
So I imagine that there's a really red side in America and a really blue side in America, and a lot of people in the middle that are just trying to get along. But sure, all I'm hearing is like there's this hard divide, and there's only red and blue. But you know, just be serious for a minute and give us the you know, tell us, Nick, is that true?
I always say that like 20%. 80% of the people think 20% of the people represent the thinking of 80% of the people, you know. Sure. Like it's like these fringe people, you know. Most liberals aren't these like Antifa, you know, violent, you know, just insanely, you know, overreactionary type people, you know. And then on the right, they're not all these like Proud Boys, you know, just militia, you know, racists. But then as you kind of go towards the middle, there's like a dilution of like, well, there's some resistance to fighting racism in a certain way in various degrees on one side. You know, and then on, you know, on the other side, there's various degrees of overreacting to insignificant, petty things that, you know, but like, you know, as you go towards the middle, it gets more, the farther you go out, the more insane each side is. And then as you get closer, that people are more like, you know, it's just not as like, it's crazy, but they, you know, people have more in common than they realize. You know, and but it's just easier to blanket the whole other side, you know, as whatever,
Yeah, sure.
It's teams. It's so teams. It's like when you're a kid and like we have Cardinals baseball and the Cubs. It was a huge rivalry in my town, St. Louis versus Chicago. And I remember St. Louis was always being like, you Cubs suck. They all suck. They're all terrible. Yeah, they suck. But yet the reality is that they're professional baseball players. You have to be fairly good
Yes.
to play Major League Baseball.
Yes.
They don't all suck, but it's just your team thing. You like to, and also some of our guys kind of suck, but it's better to say everything we do is awesome and everything they do is terrible because it makes us feel better about ourselves. But there's a wicked divide now that's worse than it's ever been, I think.
A party should come out like not the common sense party, because that's just a bit twee. But like the houses cost too much, healthcare should be for most people, not everyone, because that seems to anger everyone. And childcare should be made a universal. Everyone should get it. They should like pick 6 popular things and go forward on that.
I mean, there is like, I don't love the 2-party system. There feels to be like degrees of things, it's because everything gets painted as, oh, well, you just want to give everything away and then you don't want to do anything for anybody. And it's like, well, like you just said, I think, the big problem with the healthcare thing out here was like, it was a well-intended, I talked to so many people that were against Obamacare that talked to me after shows and been like, I'll go around the country touring and they go, I hated Obama. I hated Obamacare. And then I went to the hospital and Obamacare saved my life. And I totally read everything I said about it. And it's like, and then I know liberals that were like, yeah, Obamacare, I wound up paying way more for health insurance than I was paying before. So it kind of screwed me up. So it's like, yeah, not everything there's no perfect solution for everybody, but yeah, like saying there's only two parties feel like there's only 2 solutions. Andrew Yang out here is trying to do a third party, because there are a lot of people that are sick of like the, just their side bad, our side good mentality in this country. Man, it's hard. I don't know. Canada can do it. Canada has like a, several party system out there.
We've got sort of 4 or 5 main parties and some independents that get in, but unless they've got a casting vote, they're really crushed. So, but anyway, look, nothing is perfect, but the environment is always the biggest issue. You've got to remember that. No planet, no anything.
That's what kills me the most about this pandemic was like, remember, like Australia was on fire. That was like the biggest headline in the world. I remember like watching, I actually did a pat on my back, a benefit for the Australian wildfires. And remember being like, this is nothing can get worse than this. And then cut to 2 months later and they shut down the entire country. But I feel like that kind of got lost how big of a deal that was, that the wildfires out there, because living in California, it's like fire season all year round now.
Yeah, I know, it's amazing. But when the pandemic got going a bit, 3 months in, the environment instantly started to bounce back. Look, I'm not a crazy greenie or anything like that, but you could just see how easy. You can't go back 400 years, back to the start of the Industrial Revolution, but you could see how easily it might be to sort of wind it back a little bit. But I don't know, Nick. Look, we're not going to solve these problems.
No, it is very annoying out here. Like one of the, I don't really, I think both sides politically need to sort of like listen to each other but the one, and I always say that my political, my political affiliation is like my Friday nights. I'm my own party, but I do always like, I do always kind of get real mad at sort of the people. There's some people in our country that drag their feet on everything forever they're against gay rights forever until their nephew's gay, and then suddenly they see that it's not so bad, and then they finally drag their feet, and then finally like okay with it, even though they still fight it. And then, and then they're against marijuana. They're against, making marijuana legal till they find out they can make money off of it and invest in hedge funds that invest in it. And then they're for it. And it's like a lot of these people have been against any sort of like, trying to make the earth better and stop all this like global warming stuff. And they're against that too. And now they're finally coming around in a little bit, but it's like, if only we could find a way for people to make money off of the earth being greener, then we'd be set. They're
going to do it. They're going to do it. Jeff Bezos will save us and we'll be singing his praises. If you're not already. Look, I was against ever investing in shares, and I still haven't. But since listening to you and Nick, I'm thinking about it because you guys are very wealthy.
The podcast of Get Rich Nick was it's a bit of a joke. We thought it'd be funny. Three Stooges, every episode of the Three Stooges is them trying to make money every episode, basically. They try to find some odd job and then they screw up the job and then they get fired and they go to the next job again. And there's a lot of comedy in that. And so I kind of feel like our bit's a joke. But we have sort of like, found a lot of these like, it's been interesting what we've sort of been like digging, picking away at and seeing like, oh, this is all like a big game. And if we're not playing the game that everybody else is playing, like we're not really winning by taking a stand, Nick Turner is very anti-Amazon. And I don't love them either. But then there's also, and I don't invest in Amazon, but like I could see if someone wants to invest in it and then make money off of them, I don't fault them really for that, because it's like every man for yourself out here. That's what it feels like the rules are. I feel like I tried to do the right thing for so long, and it's just every man for himself feels like the way. And then when you have some money, then you can make more positive change than just being fucking.
Yeah, but have you ever heard of a great idea that's gone unstolen though? Isn't Amazon just setting up the world for 7 Amazons? Really? I mean, he's just laid out the whole plan, you know, and then, is that better though? 7 Amazon? I mean, you can't have shops in the main street in 10, 15 years, Main Street, whatever. You have main streets. That makes sense. Right. Like you can have like touristy shops selling touristy stuff, but surely not clothes and shoes and all that sort of thing. Most of that's got to go away, hasn't it? I mean, I don't want it to, Nick.
I don't know, because I've thought about like some of these companies, and it's like, well, having $1 billion is a bit much, but what are we really asking? We want 10 people to have 100 million. Is that better? Wouldn't it be better just to sort of like have all our eyes on one person and then keep that one person in check, then monitor these 10? Preferably we distribute it down to 1,000, we distribute that 1,000, that one company into 1,000 companies. That feels like the best scenario, but they're not going to do that. I don't know. It's just, and it's so funny how these guys look like evil villains. They look like evil villain, like him and Musk and Bezos, and I like Musk too, but they all have like, they're like Bond guys. They're like Bond villains.
Yeah. And you can't even imagine what it's like to have billions of dollars. It must be.
What would you do with the billion? What would you do with $1 billion?
I would do the same thing. I would love my hobbies and family and find something to do with my spare time. But I just don't know what I would do with that much money. I mean, obviously, I'd have to give a lot of it away because I don't really have any plans. I don't really have any plans for hundreds of millions of dollars, Nick, except to give it away. Like I don't have a plans for Amazon Mark II or anything like that.
What about 2 hats? I'd wear 2 hats. That's what I would do.
2 hats.
Show off how much money I have.
Let's have a quick chat back about the special. And your comedy is, it's like, it's, what would people, I suppose you've heard it all, outrageous, crazy, wacky, all that sort of stuff. But I mean, right from the time you land on stage, you've got people laughing from the first line, and it's so physical that you wouldn't expect just coming to get to know you from Get Rich Nick. And look, I defy anyone to click on a couple of Nick Vatterott clips and not laugh. I just you know, it's hilarious stuff.
Check out the Jimmy Fallon clip. You know, that's when people tend to like, if it works in your country. And
you really tricked me. I'd really thought you'd forgotten your set, and I was watching. I was watching like a behind the scenes clip or something, which they release occasionally.
Oh yeah. Well, I like you know, I don't know. I also feel like you know, I enjoy watching a lot of the comics from around the world too. You know, there's like I don't know. I went to what was it, Dublin, and the Vodafone Comedy Festival out there, and you know, they people do different stuff with comedy. You know, I think that's like, I always feel like comedy is like, it tends to turn into like, it has to be this one thing, and it doesn't have to be. You know, it can be like whatever. You can get up on stage and do whatever you want. You know, whenever I see somebody like get up and be like, well, I'm from here and I look like this, and this had a baby, and you're kind of like, well, I've heard a lot of great versions of that.
Is that your Martha Kelly? That seemed like that was your Martha Kelly.
I wish I had a good Martha Kelly.
Oh, you do.
But yeah, you should be able to do whatever you want. People do that because they don't know how to approach comedy, and they saw people do that, so they think that's what it's supposed to be. And I hate that people think it has to be a certain thing. It can be whatever you want, you know? And so I've always tried to play with the idea of that. You know, I did the For Amusement Only was a audio album that I put out that was like, I thought it'd be funny to have a running director's commentary throughout the entire set. So I did that live at shows, and that was like a lot of fun to do. And also I feel like, well, if you're a comic, there's just so many great comics out there to kind of like set yourself apart at all. You got to like make a bold choice in some way.
People got to stop thinking about this comedy as a career and start, you know, let's thin out this wheat from chaff, right? I reckon a bit too many.
Yeah. I always think people too, like, have this idea of like what their comedy will be one day. It's like, well, do it now. You know, what are you waiting for? Book your arenas now. That's why I only perform in arenas. If they're very empty, but I say maybe it'll we'll stick it out at some point.
You project. You move around a lot.
Right.
Now I just got to check. I don't know whether you know the comedian John O'Zalay.
Yeah, I know John.
But I asked him, did he have a question for you? Just say hello for me. Oh, Jono says hello. I asked if he had a question, and he just said, say hello for me. So hello from John O'Zalay. And I will type. I will type a response after this. Well, Disingenuous is the album. You can get it anywhere you get content, by the sounds of it. And I don't know what's going to be in there, but I know that's going to be absolutely hilarious. And you've just shot to the top of my favorite comedians just researching this interview. Nick, you're really so funny.
Well, thanks. Yeah, no, I mean, this special is me running around Chicago, you know, but then it gets like a little surreal at points, you know, like there's a bit where I'm like, I want to get up one more set. And dude's like, I think LA's still open. So then I fly to LA to do another set that night. And then there's like this weird, like, I don't want to undersell the special. I don't want to oversell it, but like there is a time travel multiverse sort of aspect that comes into play at some point. And so it gets like fucking bonkers or whatever. And there's a couple of versions of me running around. And it sucks because like I started this 4 years ago and I almost feel that sort of genre has been played out, you know, but I haven't seen it a lot in stand-up comedy. So I'm hoping it isn't completely played out in sort of that arena.
Not at all. Well, Disingenuous is the album that everyone's going to get. Get Rich Nick is the podcast. Like if I don't know how to explain that. It's you know, look, if you want to earn loads of money, you click on that, right?
Yeah, listen to if you're like, well, let's check out this podcast. I always like to recommend the one where me and Nick Turner went down to Tijuana to try to smuggle drugs back in. And went up buying like Vatterott and you know, it's a two-parter and it was a pretty funny story. But yeah.
It's a good one. Well, thanks so much, Nick Vatterott. We will talk again another day. Thank you, sir.
I'm glad this worked out, and thanks so much for working with my crazy schedule.
My pleasure, Bulls.